Well, 50 years ago this week, Pope Pius XII died, known as Eugene Pacelli, and we want to spend a few moments talking about this infamous Pope and what your thoughts were on him.
Yeah, exactly 50 years ago, I think it's this weekend, that Eugene Pacelli, aka Pope Pius XII, died. I remember it very well. I was living in South London at the time. I remember my father telling me that the Pope had died and the Catholic Church would never be the same again. And in some ways I think he was right, because the Vatican Council came along and turned the whole thing upside down and pointed in a left-wing direction. But yes, he died 50 years ago this week. Very emotional man, so they say. He used to have all his meals on his own with just a canary for company, which is very sad. So says Mother Pasqualina, who was his housekeeper at the Vatican, I think, for about 19 years. She was also with him in Bavaria. Interestingly, I think the day after she died, she was summoned to one of the officers, one of the senior cardinals in the Vatican. I think it's Cardinal Ottaviani, who said, "Your service is no longer required, vacate the Vatican and take the bird with you." So rather sad for the bird as well. He'd probably been quite happy there. But in the early days of his death, I think possibly in the 60s, it was rumoured very much so that he would be made a saint of the Roman Catholic Church. We as born-again Christians believe that we are all saints when we're born again, but he would be confirmed, canonised as a saint of the Roman Catholic Church.
Just explain to us what canonisation means, please.
Well, canonisation is when they open up a file on a prospective candidate who's going to be made a pope. They appoint a devil's advocate, as they say, to look at the man, to find out all of this, and to investigate claims that he was a worthy man, he was a holy man, and that 3 or 4 miracles are done for people who say, well, I prayed to such and such, Padre Pio, whoever it was, and my wishes were recurred. So that will go on for a few years. Then he becomes venerable, and then eventually pass on, become canonised, become full-blown saint. Didn't happen, of course, because the rumours were still surfacing that the Vatican had been very much involved with the Nazis. The infamous Concordat of 1933, which he signed not as Pius XII, but for Pius XI, when he was Secretary of State. Cardinal Pacelli was signed in 1933, and there's a famous picture, of course. You can see him at the table signing this. Franz von Pappen's there, and we've written about him on our website, and you can read all about this very distinguished, high-ranking Masonic Catholic gentleman, Franz von Pappen. You can see Cardinal Ottaviani, who I've just mentioned there. He was Monsignor Montini, and right out of the picture is a little figure standing there who was Monsignor Montini, of course, who later became Pope Paul VI. But yes, that's when the beginning set, that the Vatican would recognise the Catholic, the Nazi government, wouldn't criticise them too much, and in return they were able to practice their beliefs and so forth. Of course, later on, several books came out highlighting what had happened. Certain telegrams came forward that had been sent to the Vatican, applied to the Jews, and to their credit, certain German bishops saying, look, you know, we've got a concentration camp near us, people are being rounded up in the night, we're very concerned about this. We've been to the nuncio in Berlin, I think his name was Orsenigo, Archbishop Orsenigo, and nothing much is being done about it. So there were people doing something. By and large, it seems the Vatican sleptwalked through this. And of course, 10 years ago, the infamous book came out, and I can't remember the author. Is it Robert Cromwell?
Robert Cromwell, yeah.
Cromwell, Hitler's Pope, which you'll probably see flashing up on the screen about now. And there you can see Pacelli winging out towards this Mercedes there, and there's German soldiers standing inside saluting him. Hitler's Pope. Hasn't the title stuck?
Is it not true that the Catholic bishops threw parties for Hitler every year when they're in Germany?
Yes. On his birthday every year, April the 20th, I believe, there was a big reception and a party held in Berlin.
And Pius never criticised Hitler, did he?
Pius never criticised it at all, no. Nothing was ever said about that.
And Churchill and Roosevelt couldn't understand why he wouldn't he had Vatican Radio, and he never criticised the Nazis. We know that priests and nuns were murdered by the Nazis,
yes,
but the hierarchy was safe.
Yeah, priests and nuns were murdered by the Nazis, and a couple of bishops were thrown in there as well. But Pius did nothing about, turned his back on. There's nothing done at all about it.
And also strong speculation that at the end of the war, Pius XII actually gave Hitler a requiem mass.
Rumour is, and I think this may have come from Malachi Martin, but I can't be too sure, that Pius XII officiated at a requiem mass. I mean, Hitler's body wasn't there, of course. Hitler was in the bunker of Berlin, but a requiem mass can be held in any country, in any cathedral throughout the world, for the soul of Adolf Hitler, who was born and bred a Catholic in Austria, as so many of them were.
And died a Catholic as well.
As far as we know, he died a Catholic as well, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he was very close to the Jesuits, I mean, which we'll come to in a minute. I mean, Mein Kampf, for example, which was written when Hitler was in Landsberg prison, one of the editors who looked at the manuscript when Hess took it all down, Rudolf Hess took it down, was a Jesuit, Father Robert Stempel, I think his name was. You'll pull me up it, but it was Stempel, who was anti the Jews, hated the Jews, you know, and did edit the book. And I think in the foreword of the original Mein Kampf, he does thank Father Stempel for his input into this book, for the editing and so forth.
And he had a very painful death, didn't he, Pius XII? Like all these popes, had very painful deaths.
Terrible death, awful death. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. But I think a couple of months before he died, he was struck by an awful illness of hiccups. And it went on for something like 3 or 4 days of hiccup, all the time. They could do nothing about it, and this will weaken anybody's physique. And then, of course, he died very much alone. His doctor then sold some awful photographs of the body lying in the bed. Another count, because he was a Count Pacelli, of course. So a lot of these men do have awful deaths, certainly the popes.
And he rubbished the book of Genesis, said it was written for primitive people, I think he said.
Yes, I don't think they've ever been pro-Genesis in the way that we would be. I think they've sort of they've given Darwin...
They've allegorised.
Yeah, they've allegorised. I think they've given Darwin the possible doubt that what Darwin's saying could be right. But yes, he rubbished that for idiots, so you're an idiot and so am I.
Think the man's saved?
Absolutely not. No, I don't think. Any of those popes are saved. And I knew a priest who'd worked in the Vatican some years ago, and he was convinced that this Pope, Pius XII, was the last real, true Roman Catholic. Well, if he's the last true Roman Catholic Pope, I think that's what he meant, the proper traditional Pope, then he's languishing in the fires of hell.
So there you are, 50 years ago this week, Eugene Pacelli, aka Pope Pius XII, passed away. Very controversial Pope. He hasn't been canonised because we believe he was too close to the Nazis, and that's his stigma.
Yeah, I mean...
That's his legacy, really.
I think the man, what I can make out, was very highly strung, and I think, like so many of these men who are highly strung, I think Anthony Eden was as well, they push the problem to the back of their mind, and I think they hope that it will go away. Well, of course, Anthony Eden was Prime Minister, he was dealing with world events, but Pacelli was dealing with millions of people, men, women and children, who were being shipped off to the camps every day from 1936, when Dachau opened up, and we went there, and you can look at our pictures of Dachau, certainly till 1945. Klaus Barbie was still sending people from Jews in Paris, late 1944, early 1945, with the connivance of the chief of police, who was a Roman Catholic, and with the connivance of the bishops, the French bishops who went along with this. And interestingly enough, the man who became Pope after Pius XII, Roncalli, who was the nuncio, not the nuncio, what they call it, apostolic delegate in Turkey, was the man who was elevated to cardinal. Everybody was surprised, sent to Paris to weed out these bishops who had been pro all of this and to get rid of them. I think they found about 2, became the next Pope. Talk about him another time.
So there you are. We're going to do a series of videos in the coming weeks on Roman Catholicism. This is the start with Pius XII. As always, thanks for your videos, thanks for your comments, thanks for your thoughts, and Maranatha.
Maranatha from this ministry as well.